And we're on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live.
Yes, and we are live.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and listening to Alive and Wellness. This is actually our first live podcast brought to you by the Northwest Missouri State University's Wellness Services Prevention Outreach and Education team. And we're on Twitch. We focus on mental well-being. Facebook Live.
Yes, and we are live. I can't hear your
Hi.
phone.
Alcohol and other drugs.
Yeah.
Our mission is to educate and empower listeners. Today, I'm your host, Monica Ziegel, the Hope for All coordinator, and we will be talking with BK Taylor, who is the Assistant Director of Prevention, Outreach, and Education. And we will be talking about Flourish.
All right, thanks, Monica. So, as I'd like to remind you, we are doing the first ever live podcast, so bear with us in any technical difficulties we maybe have. As you can see both Monica and I on the screen. And if you have any questions as we go throughout, we'll probably note this as we're going through. We're going to be talking about well-being theory, about how to flourish as an individual psychologically. So if you have any questions, concerns, thoughts, please throw them into the chat. We'll be glad to answer them and talk about them a little further. But let's get started. The first thing we got to talk about is where psychology is versus where it was, Monica. And the first thing that I really kind of note about that is that psychology was really designed with the intent of taking those who are not doing well and helping them to be neutral, right? This idea of being sick and getting to zero. Exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about. And as you can reflect in this kind of image I have below, these are the diagnostic manuals, or better known as the DSM, in the field of psychology. If a mental illness exists, it exists in this book. And if it's not in this book, then it's not a diagnosable mental illness. What you might not know is that if you actually look from the earliest DSMs to the modern day DSMs, that book has become significantly larger. With more and more mental illness represented inside that text. These are not negative things. In no way am I trying to insult the field. The idea of taking someone from being ill and getting them to not being ill is a really admirable goal and something that we should really pursue and develop and grow. And no way am I trying to take away from that. But I'm suggesting that there's maybe an equal side to the equation. Say it one more time.
There's more to it, and rather than just getting back to zero, we can do better.
Exactly. So the idea that we don't just want to not be sick, but that we want to do better, that we want to become well, and we want to have well-being, and that's something that we can achieve and we can invest in. And that's where, oh goodness, this slide kind of comes into play. And this is the illness wellness continuum. It's this idea of of -10 to 0, but this idea that there's 0 to +10, awareness, education, growth, that we as individuals can become better. And that's what we inspire towards. We don't want to just, it's like going out to eat. We don't want to just go out to eat just to have nutrients. We want to go out to eat to have a great meal. We want to live a life, not to just have a life, but to live a great life and to grow and to flourish. So another way of thinking about this is a little bit from the people who kind of presented some of these ideas. So I always love to talk about Sigmund Freud, not only an incredibly influential figure in psychology, at times a very controversial figure, but really one of the great fathers of the field of psychology, right?
Right, of course.
And
everything's your mother's fault, though.
Say that again?
Everything's your mom's fault, right?
That was one of his ideas. He had a lot back to the idea of parenting, and that sex was a really driving force in why humans act the way and do the things that they do. But Freud had one in particular idea that I want to kind of focus on today, which is that humans are ordinarily miserable. That it is really unhealthy in his perception to be happy. Again, not everything that he said was right. Now, there were some things that were obviously truly influential in the field and truly accurate. And a couple of those that really come to mind off the top of my head is this idea of subconscious. We still talk about the idea of what thoughts that lie beneath the consciousness. Now, that theory has grown and changed a fair amount, but he was one of the originals to ever propose the idea of consciousness. But yes, there were some things he was inaccurate about. This idea of being ordinarily miserable is one of those things that I probably would push up against and say, I don't think that's the case. At least I don't want it to be the case.
I don't think it's the case either. But you were right though that he did talk about that our daily actions are conscious. Our behaviors are actually conscious, even if they're like subconscious and we're not really thinking about them.
Yeah. Now, so on the flip side of that coin, and really the author of the theory that we're going to be talking today, Dr. Martin Seligman, suggested that we needed to focus as much on what makes people grow as we do on what makes people ill. And he really challenged the field, as one of many people to challenge the field, to inspire towards this growth mindset, towards this idea of positive psychology, towards this idea of flourishing. And he actually wrote a book in 2016 called Flourish, where he introduced his evolving theory. Monica has it on her, called well-being theory, where he talks about 5 elements. This theory really grew over time. You can actually look through many of his books. He's got several books out these days. But you can see how his theory grew from the 70s to modern day and how it evolved and became more holistic as it moved forward. But it really gives us a way to start thinking about well-being and about the parts that make us flourish. So let me introduce those 5 parts. Go ahead.
This book had a really positive effect on me. It really changed my way of thinking about my own mental wellness and other people's mental wellness. It's had a huge impact on me. I've recommended it to practically everyone I know.
It is an excellent book.
And by the way, people that are on my watch party, can you see us right now? Because I have a blank screen.
Really?
Yes. Well, several people joined, but nobody's answering.
Everything seems to be functioning on my side that I can tell.
Okay, well, maybe it's just mine.
Okay. I was like, maybe refresh.
Oh, somebody sent me a thumbs up, so I think we're good.
All right. Well, I agree completely with Monica. I would really advocate that people take a chance, pull it up on Amazon, get on your Kindle. It's even an audiobook, and give it a read. It's really good. It's surprisingly engaging, though Dr. Martin Seligman is the former president of the American Psychological Association. He's a professor at University of Pennsylvania. It is not written as a textbook. It is really written highly engaging, obviously really research founded, but very, very highly engaging text. So I quite enjoy it.
I do as well.
So Dr. Seligman introduces 5 elements to this idea of well-being. And these 5 are on the screen as you see them in front of you. Positive emotions, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment. To abbreviate the whole, we refer to them as PERMA. PERMA are these 5 parts, as you can see reflected on the front there, PERMA. So the first thing I kind of want to note as we dive into this is it's very important to realize that these are not a simple equation of things we add together to come to a whole. That it is much more complex than that. Dr. Martin Seligman actually compares in his text to this idea of weather, that you cannot measure weather. Instead, you measure components of weather to come to a whole. So if you look at weather, you would say that weather is made of humidity, of sunlight, of cloudiness, of precipitation, that those things come together, temperature, that they come together to make the whole that is weather, but that there is no singular number. You can't say the weather is singularly the temperature, but it is made up of all of these things. And very much our well-being is the same way. It is made up of these 5 parts, but in different ways, at different gravities, different levels, depending on where we are with our life. What are your thoughts, Monica?
Well, what I really like about it is that, yes, we're all pursuing meaning and accomplishment and everything in our lives, but we can pursue other things just for their own sake, such as positive emotions doesn't necessarily have to be leading us towards our end goal. For instance, like he talks about in his book, getting a massage. Is getting a massage in and of itself going to get me closer to what my my life goal is. No, but it feels good and it makes me happy. And that in turn relates to my well being.
Perfect. And actually, that is a great transition into positive emotion. This idea of things that make us feel better. You can see on the screen that I have chocolate ice cream and Oreos. I'm a big fan of chocolate ice cream and Oreos. That is not for everyone. That may not bring positive emotion for everyone, but for BK Taylor, it most certainly does. And that's kind of the core of it. These things that we enjoy, if that's a massage, if that's exercise, if that's certain activities. He is also a big a big card player. Now I can't think of the game. It just escaped me. Backgammon? Is that right?
Maybe.
And he talks about enjoying it, and we'll get into how it goes into his larger level of well-being. But that a big piece of our well-being is finding things that bring us joy, that bring us positive emotion, and then not only finding those things, but spending time with them. And there's a specific exercise that I'd like to process with you, Monica, that is really effective for cultivating those positive emotions. And that's a positive emotion journal. This is a pretty simple exercise that you can do in the morning when you get up, or you can do in the evening before you go to bed. But basically, you can take 3 to 5 things that brought you positive emotion that day, and you write them down. But it's not as simple as creating a checklist or writing things in a book, but a little bit more complicated in the sense that you write about them and you kind of express why. So let's say I were to write.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm saying I do this. Because of this book, I started doing this with my family at dinner at night. Nice. I would make them tell me 3 good things about their day, or 3 things that made them happy, or just 3 good things. Yeah. And then you're getting into the why did this make me happy? So I'll let you go on with this.
No, that's perfect. So, well, and it's that idea of kind of savoring, right? We use the word when we're talking about food to savor a meal, but we can also savor emotions, savor experiences, and that's what this is about. Is taking that time to savor those positive things that we're experiencing. If that's a sunny day, or a pleasant walk, or a great conversation with a friend. These are all things that we can take time to savor. And when you write those down, you're not only writing them down, but you're spending some time kind of chewing on them. And this has really shown some incredible positive psychological attributes when you spend the time to go through this exercise. Well, as Monica can reflect, I think.
Absolutely. It makes me think of, this is very silly and it may show how old I am, but the movie Pollyanna, where she talks about when she's talking to the preacher and she says, when you look for the bad in people, you'll surely find it. Well, that's the same way for good. If you start looking for good things,
oh goodness,
the less you focus on the negatives, which of course there's negatives in everyone's life, but do we need to focus on them?
I think that's an incredibly good point. That your mind is very much a garden, and what you focus on is what will grow. If you spend time, watering the weeds, then weeds will grow. If you spend time watering the flowers, then flowers will grow. And it's a bit of a process. Now, there's gives and takes to everything, right? And balance and all. This is not to smile through everything and experience no pain. Right. That's not at all the intent. But to take intentional activities to find things that bring you joy.
Not letting those.
Not letting those.
You cut out there a little bit.
Sorry.
But yeah, it's not letting those negative emotions ruin your whole day. Yeah. We're going to have negative emotions, and that's completely natural and normal. But you recognize it and, feel what you feel like you need to feel at that moment, and then let it go and start working on something else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's that realization that no emotion is negative, right? That the part of the human experience is that all emotions are to happen. But what becomes a problem is when people get stuck in that emotion, when that all they experience is sadness or anger or frustration. So This is just an exercise to try to cultivate a little bit more positive emotion in one's life. If it works for you, give it a go. And if it doesn't, we're going to be talking about a couple more things throughout this podcast. All right. I'm going to shift to engagement. I use this this image because I really like it, because when I think about engagement, one of the big words that come to mind for me is flow. And I think this is a great, really beautiful illustration of flow. Flow is that idea of kind of losing yourself into an activity. If you talk to musicians, if you talk to athletes, I know Monica is active in working out and being very physically active, and I've had the privilege to know that she finds a great deal of flow in getting into her rhythm as it pertains to that physical activity. And I think I've engaged in a lot of activities. One that I can reflect one of my biggest experiences on is professional speaking, where I can lose myself kind of to the moment, to the audience, and the opportunity to express these really great things. And what's really neat about flow is it's not really necessarily a conscious thing. When researchers studied flow, and many researchers have, when they asked the participants who were in flow, what were they thinking? The answer is often nothing. I wasn't thinking, I was doing. And then they asked them another big key element of flow is, what was your perception of time? And, time becomes not relevant. It's no longer there. So finding those things that you can deeply engage with and be part of and lose yourself in. It's just a really incredible sensation to find flow, but something that can be very challenging to find and maintain.
Right. And I definitely feel that. You talked about me working out. I lose myself. I lose track of time. The next thing I know, I look down at my watch and I've been doing it for an hour and a half. And I'm like, where did the time go? And it doesn't feel like work. It's just goodness.
Yeah. So one of the tricks that I would often advise someone if they're trying to find flow is to connect with their strengths. And I'll actually transition into this next slide. Up on the screen there, you're going to see 5 attributes. Those 5 attributes are my signature strengths from the Signature Strengths Assessment from the Authentic Happiness site from the University of Pennsylvania, actually cultivated by Dr. Martin Seligman. You can actually go to that website. You can Google Authentic Happiness, UPenn, and you'll go to this website, and on the top of the website, there's a tab that says assessment, and in that assessment, you can take the Authentic Strengths Signature Test. I believe it's something like 144 questions. I know that sounds like a lot, but I only think it takes about 15 minutes or so. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it's called the VIA Survey of Character Strengths.
Values and Actions, Character Strengths. It's really an incredible assessment. One of the things that was really done, it was both Dr. Seligman and Dr. Peterson that worked on cultivating this assessment, and they did their best to go around the world and create a global series of strengths, 24 strengths actually, that might really surprise you. And then when you take this assessment, they identify your top 5, which they refer to as your signature strengths. And they strongly advise that you do not focus on your bottom 5, but instead to focus on those top 5. Because this is all about cultivating what is better in front of you.
You want to know what my top 5 are?
I would.
And you keep cutting out just a little bit. I think
that's just for you. What are your top 5?
So my top 5 are love of learning, gratitude, capacity to love and be loved, appreciation of beauty and excellence, and humor and playfulness, which is probably not a surprise to you.
I think those are really positive, and I really like them. And you're right, they're really not. And as you can see, mine are creativity, ingenuity, and originality is my top strength. Hope, optimism, and future-mindedness. Mindedness is my second. Bravery and valor is my third. Leadership is my fourth, and social intelligence. And you know what really kind of blows me away about this assessment is I took this many years ago, but there is no assessment that I can reflect back on that I keep coming back to, with some rare exceptions, that speak to who I am truly. Um, uh, and it really helps for me to look back on them. But I think kind of to the point of why these are in here, is that these really help me to find my level of flow. Another place beyond my professional speaking that I've always found flow is in the process of creating. I love being creative. I love innovating. That is where my heart truly lies. And it is my top strength. So that makes a lot of sense. So
And that's been really helpful during our working from home during COVID.
well, I appreciate that. It was a time where innovation was a little a necessity, and I have to admit it was also a struggle. So I appreciate that.
No, agreed.
So at
Definitely.
this point, oh, go ahead, Monica.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
I was going to shift us to our next the R in perma, but before we jump into this one, I felt like this is a logical place to see for those who are viewing if there's any questions that we can answer or talk about kind of up to this point um, as we go into talking about relationships. So, is there anything on your mind, Monica?
Um, well, I got the great opportunity to go to Fort Jackson in South Carolina last year and learn master resiliency training with the Army, which was put together with Dr. Seligman. And the only thing different about that, really, and talking about your signature strengths, is that they talk about all of them, that we all have, like, we all have all 25 of those within us. There's 25, right? Yeah.
Yes, 24.
But anyway, that, you talked about not to focus on those bottom 5, and we didn't focus on the bottom 5, but we did talk about that we have all 24 of those. That the top 5 are just the ones that we use automatically, basically.
Yeah. Well, and that was a real honor to go through that master's resiliency training and yeah, it's cultivated by Dr. Seligman. They used research from the Gottmans, who are specialists in relationship psychology. It's truly a revolutionary training that you attended, and really setting you up to be a outstanding specialist in the field.
It was probably the best training I've ever been to. It was so good. And then it just being there with the Army, I didn't know how that was going to go. They just took me on as one of their own.
Oh yeah, and that's awesome. Well, and actually, it kind of transitions. And please throw in any questions that you might have, audience, while you're while we're chatting. We'll make certainly answer them. It goes well into the idea of relationships. I would say relationships is the fundamental, the core of virtually everything that you'll see in the study of positive psychology. It's actually why I use this picture of wolves, because humans at the end of the day are pack animals. We really truly need each other. Now we can talk about the science of introversion and the science of extroversion, but at the end of the day, we really need one another, and it's fundamentally important to have those people we can go to, we can talk to, that we can express our concerns with. There's a cat running across my screen, excuse me. And to be able to express what's really going on in our lives. It's just such a core fundamental thing. And however one can find their way to connect with another person is really important. And I think the challenge with our current situation of COVID-19 is maintaining that, right, through Zoom or through Discord or through texting or FaceTime or Skype or whatever service you may be using, that we really do still need to connect with each other, and how important that is.
Absolutely. My kids have been great, especially my daughter. She's been coming up with things to do, but I'm very much a people person, and I was really worried about coming home to work. But my kids, and then you and the rest of our POE team, how much we communicated and continue to communicate has been instrumental in keeping me from really hating working at home.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that, and it can be hard, right? It can be hard to maintain that. I think that's a difficult time. Sometimes initiation of relationships, of communication, can often seem more exhausting than the benefit, because in the moment, the energy you have to put forward to talk is harder than the what you may receive at the other side, right? So there's that risk and value, but my experience is it's often worth the risk, worth the energy to initiate those communications, to talk with people, and realize that on the other side, it will be really truly valuable. So,
Absolutely.
but I think an important part of that is how you talk with people, which I know this part is also in your training. The idea of types of communication, and what those types of communication look like, and some of the struggles that come with that. So I'm actually going to talk about those real quick. So Dr. Solomon, with the work of the Gottmans, identified kind of four types of communication, ones that we maybe do more or less, and how those impact us. I'm going to kind of talk about the not so positive ones first and go from there. It's often joking that they refer to active destruction. They think about the drill sergeant, right? This is the idea of someone who actively tears down the person they're communicating with. A good example is, let's say a friend comes to you, or you come to a friend and you tell them you just got a promotion, and their response is,
Ew, now
it,
you have to pay higher taxes.
"Yes, that's perfect." You know, what tax bracket does that put us in, right? Something to tear down, that to show that this isn't valuable to that person, and that it's not something that they should be proud that they achieved. I'd like to think most of us don't engage in active deconstruction. Because obviously that can have huge detrimental impacts. The second one, which I have to say probably more often than we care to admit, we do sometimes engage in, is passive deconstruction. And this is kind of in that same scenario. You go to a friend, you tell them you just got a promotion, and they respond with something to the degree of, "Hey, have you seen this new cat video on YouTube or on TikTok, as it would be?" The intent is not malicious. It is not to deconstruct, um, actively deconstruct, but it's passively deconstructing. It's passively tearing down by ignoring what that person is bringing to you, and not really being there in the moment with them, and expressing what's happening, and what that person is feeling.
Or one
Um,
up them.
yeah, I think, again, yeah, one up can be a passive destruction, but it can also be one upping can really be an active destruction depending on how aggressive a person is with it. So
Right.
the next one, which I imagine a good chunk of us probably engage with, is this passive construction. And passive construction is someone brings you good news, like I just got promoted, and you say, "Well, that's awesome, congratulations." You're being supportive, you're being present. But it's just that. It's not a bad way. It doesn't cause any damage. But the really neat thing here is about taking this to the next level, right? And becoming even better. And that's where active construction comes in. Active construction is that person comes to you and says, "Hey, I just got promoted." You say, "Really? That's awesome. Tell me what experiences, what things do you think led to this promotion? Tell me some of the things that your supervisor told you when going into being given this promotion." And it's more about not just finding the value in what that person accomplished, but trying to be there in that moment with them, to be in that same space and to experience that moment with them. And that's that active construction communication style. And it's truly beneficial to build relations, to cultivate stronger relationships, though it takes work and intentionality, and it's not easy. So something to think about as you move forward.
Yeah, this exercise, we worked on it at the MRT training, and it really it really opened my eyes to how I communicate with my daughter. Actually, my daughter and I are really close. Everyone that knows me knows that, and her and I, we have a great relationship, and it's really important to me. But what I realized through going through this training was that my feedback to her was more active destructive. I would be proud of what she had done, but then I would say, "Oh, you did a great job, but you could have done better if blah blah blah." And I'm like, "Oh gosh, I felt horrible about that." So I made an attempt, and I think I've done a really good job. She seems happier anyway, of changing that to the active constructive, where, like, especially after ball games and everything, I just talked to her about all the great things that she did, and then just leave it at that. And
Yeah.
how did it feel? You did this so well, and blah blah blah, and whatever. And I just leave it at that. Now, if there was something that she may have needed to work on, I'll wait until the next day and I'll say, "Hey, let's work on your passing," and just go from there. And it seems to have improved our relationship.
Awesome. So that real life experience of taking this technique, this tool, and utilizing it in a positive way.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. See, and I think it's really neat if we just spend a little bit more time with the level of intentionality, we can really see huge positive impacts on those things. So, which shifts us to our next topic, which is meaning. And meaning can look like a lot of different things to a lot of different people, and I kind of want to note that really out of the gates. When I talk about meaning, I often talk about this idea of purpose, right? Of serving something, being part of something bigger than yourself, and that's really what I think about when I'm talking about meaning. And I there's a parable that my teacher, Dr. Tim Crowley, taught me, and that I love to share, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it, Monica.
Okay.
So it's about the three construction workers, and they go to the first construction worker and they ask him, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Well, I'm stacking bricks. I hate stacking bricks. Stacking bricks is the worst." And they're like, "Okay." So they go to the second construction worker and they ask him, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm building a building. It's got its good days. It's got its bad days. But I'm ultimately building something." And I was like, wow, that's really different. So they go to a third construction worker and they say, what are you doing?" And he says, "I'm building a cathedral. I'm building a place where people will go and have their lives changed every single day. Thousands and thousands of people will have their lives saved." And then the interesting part of this parable is that all three men were working on the same thing. So it's really about perspective when you start thinking about meaning. Everything that we choose to engage with can serve something greater, can be part of something bigger. And it's really where our heads are at, where we're focused on. I think that one of the most interesting and potentially most ironic things I've ever experienced kind of working in this field is I talk to people a lot about their passions. What do they want to become? What do they want to do with their lives? And one of the things that I find people most ashamed to admit to tell me when asking them what do they want to be, what do they want to do with their lives, is to be a parent. That they're really hesitant to share that they want to be parents. And here's the thing: when I look around, I don't think to myself, "Wow, there are too many good parents in the world." That's not a struggle I run across a lot. Of course, there's great meaning and substance and purpose in being a parent and cultivating the next generation and leading a child. I mean, I know my privilege working with Monica that her being a mother and having that relationship is so key and important to who you are. Am I wrong about that?
Absolutely not. I think when you interviewed me for the job, I let you know right away before you even hired me that I had never missed one of my children's ball games, and I didn't plan on starting.
Yeah. Well, and there are things that are again are more important that lend us either even greater meaning. And I think we got to spend some time thinking about that and kind of processing on that, which actually shifts us to our final piece of PERMA, which is accomplishment. And accomplishment is really this idea of pursuing and achieving our goals. We have to have somewhere to go. We got to have somewhere to aim towards, something to inspire towards. If that's an educational degree or a job or something that we're wanting to just achieve in our lives, building a house, writing a book, traveling to all 50 states, whatever it may be, we have to have somewhere to go. And that becomes a really big deal in our lives, and actually kind of brings me to the second point, which, my goal today was really to hopefully introduce some of these concepts, but really to be able to give people some tools to really go above and beyond with them. And the way that I like to think about that is through legacy. So I always tell people one of the most interesting exercises a person can do is to do a legacy statement. And a legacy statement is 3 to 5 sentences of what people would say once you've reached the end of your road, once you've passed away. What would you want your kids to write about you? What would you want your friends to write about you? What would you want people to say those days? And so I actually was doing this exercise once in a classroom. I was teaching class, and one of the students said, "Wow, BK, we're really talking about some dark stuff about death." And I said, no, you misunderstand. My goal is to talk about life. I want to talk about what it is you're doing and what is it that you want to do, because it's not static, right? We're always growing and we're changing. We get to choose the path we walk down. Now, I always say that we never choose to fall down, but we always choose to get back up. Now, when you fall, we go down the wrong path. I know without a doubt that I have done both those things many times, as Monica reflects the same. But the exciting part is that we still get to choose. We get to still have our legacy. We get to still look and inspire towards something, and that ripple effect, which is why I use this picture, can be profound. It can really change people's lives. It can change your life, and it can be a really driving force. So I always challenge people to kind of write this legacy statement, put it somewhere on a mirror, somewhere you see often, and inspire towards it. Realize that you're growing towards it, because you're always moving, and you can never go back. That's the hard thing that I think, in particularly now in the midst of COVID-19, is we'll never go back. We'll never be where we were before we went into COVID-19, but we will be somewhere new. And there will be a new normal, a new world, a new work-life balance, a new family life. These things we get to be part of. So we may never get to go back, but we most certainly get to go forward. And we get to have a lot to say about that change.
I agree completely. This exercise, it's kind of funny. We didn't call it a legacy statement, but we had... when I worked in the prison with inmates, we had them write their own eulogies.
Yes.
And we had them write 2 of them. We had them write one as if they don't make the changes that they need to make in their life, and then the other one is when they do make the changes that they need to make in their life, and how those eulogies contrast.
Nice. My cat is very excited about engaging with us in this conversation. Yeah. She's quite the fan of legacy, or she just wants attention, one of the two.
I'm going to go with
attention. And so as you start thinking about this, you get to this idea of the world, right? Of this being our world, and us being able to shape it and kind of dictate where it is, what it is, and where we're wanting to go. Which always brings me to this big statement that I can't help but repeat, and I seem to repeat it no matter where I go to speak. But it's this. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing inevitably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. I believe Monica knows where this is from.
Yes.
Yes.
And I have one that is that's very similar.
Yeah. Well, let's first. So this is from, before I let Monica read hers, I want to make sure that I get out where this is from. This is actually from the Declaration of Independence, and Thomas Jefferson wrote this. But go ahead, Monica.
I say, if you are in neutral situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse and say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed.
Yeah. See, that's incredible, and again ties into kind of taking this same phrase, and it's actually brought into a simpler form in the movie National Treasure, which I absolutely love, and I think it references this perfectly, which is if there's something wrong, those who have the ability to take action have the responsibility to take action. If there's
Right.
something wrong, those who have the ability to take action have the responsibility to take action.
And that
Uh,
makes I'm kind of a history geek, and World War II was one of my focuses when I was in my undergrad, and it makes me think a lot of, the German citizens during World War II. They said they were neutral, but they didn't necessarily agree with what Hitler was doing, but they just stood back and let things happen.
yeah. And we can't do that. I mean, not even. I mean, that's it's a very very extreme case, right? Like where a nation ultimately falls under a terrible regime. But even in our lives, as simple as engaging with meaning or purpose or relationships, we have to do things if we want to see different outcomes. We have to engage with our lives and take effort and work, and it's not easy. And it's not always sunshine and rainbows. It's not always about smiling, but it's about realizing that each day, if we make a step back or step forward, is still another day, right? And that sometimes we're going to have good days and sometimes we're going to have bad days. And that we can really do a lot to really influence our lives and to cultivate well-being so that we can be better people, so that the people around us can see that and have that same opportunity. And hope for the best for all those who are around us. And as we kind of think about COVID-19 and about the students of Northwest Missouri State University who we are here to serve, and that we do these programs for, we know it's a struggle right now. It's a struggle to stay motivated during finals week. It's a struggle to stay connected. It's a struggle to understand why even do these things now. And we just want to remind people that, it's okay to struggle. The services that are provided at Wellness Services are still being provided. If you need a counselor, please call Wellness Center. We'll get you connected with a counselor. We're doing a lot of telehealth right now. It's really amazing stuff. If you need to see a nurse or a nurse practitioner or a medical doctor, please call the Wellness Center. They're still doing telehealth care as well. But realize that there's still a lot of good work you're doing out there, and that Northwest is a family that grows and becomes better, and that we believe in. And that's why Monica and I are so blessed to be part of this and to be able to share these things that we're sharing today, and really hope that we're bringing something to somebody's life that is valuable, and that we truly care. We believe in you. We know that by taking action, by moving forward, that you'll do great things.
Absolutely. And it can you talked about sometimes it's hard, but it doesn't always have to be. You can make a difference in the world simply by, you see a piece of trash on the ground and you decide to pick it up instead of walking past it.
Yeah,
Just being active in your role as a citizen of the world.
that's awesome. Well, so at this point, we've reached the kind of the end of our presentation. We'll leave that quote on the screen. But we'd ask, is there any questions from the viewers who would be interested that Monica and I can take some questions? Be glad to answer them for you. Yeah. Well, and I want to, while people are processing on their questions, please feel free to type away. I want to thank Monica for giving me this opportunity to join her and to talk about well-being theory and how to flourish and how to psychologically flourish using the great work of Dr. Martin Seligman and some of the works of Dr. Peterson and other really brilliant minds that exist out there who are doing this amazing work to cultivate us as individuals. So thank you, Monica.
Well, and I just want people, yeah, absolutely. And I want people to know that they have a lot more control over their own happiness and resiliency than they may believe. And there are little things like the 3 things that you want to journal every day that you can do that intentionally improve your level of happiness. And happy people are more resilient people are more happy. It's it all goes together.
Perfect. All right, Monica.
There,
Go ahead.
sorry, so many books out there and so much stuff on the internet that you can read. And then, as BK said, wellness services is still open. If you need anything, don't hesitate to reach out.
Perfect. Well, on that note, it was our pleasure being able to spend this time with you. Again, thank you, Monica, for having me. And we hope to see you at our next live stream, or follow us at NW_wellness on Twitter, or Northwest Missouri State University Wellness Services on Facebook. Our goal is to produce great content for students, faculty, and staff at Northwest Missouri State University, but we are always here to lend a helping hand to anyone that we can. Again, thank you, Monica. Thank everyone who was willing to view, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Everybody have a great day, or have the kind of day you want to have. It's all up to you.